All right, I think we're broadcasting. So I was originally going to kick off this by just writing unit tests live, but I realized how boring that was. And thankfully, Corey and Pete from the big software side of things have been interested in unit testing layers as well. So I figured we'd have a discussion about where unit testing is right now, where we'd like to see it go for layers, and kind of just start working out what the next actionable steps could be and how people can help contribute to that, those interested in testing. So I guess, Pete, I know you have a work in progress for some of the big data stuff. Do you want to show what you've been working on so far?
Sure. Yeah, I'm actually not certain that I'm going in the right direction with it, but I can definitely pull it up. So let's see. I have a PR on GitHub, and let me link that in the chat, and then I guess I can share my screen and kind of show people what I'm thinking about. Okay, so there's a PR, and that has a testing harness and some basic tests for the big top base layer, which is a layer that we use on the team to do a lot of our charms right now. And let's see, actually let me make my Emacs window a little bit more reasonably sized for sharing, and there we go. So I can go ahead and open up, let's see, Apache Big Top Base. Oh, you know, I'm in the wrong branch, sorry. Let me grab my branch. Unit tests. There we go. So I have a unit testing directory, and in this unit testing directory I have basically, actually let me just kind of open the directory to, so I have some tests and I have a harness. And I think that this harness should end up living elsewhere in the library, but for now I've got stuff there. And what this harness does is it uses Python mock to mock out stuff in other layers that this layer depends on, but that don't necessarily exist in the library that you could pip install. And I think one of the discussions to be had is whether that's appropriate just to mock things out, or whether we really should move stuff that you want to actually be able to import in unit test into a library. But in this case, we basically mock out this whole layer directory from the perspective of the Apache Big Top base layer, which means that you can install, or you can import the Apache Big Top base layer for testing, but anything that it imports from the layer directory gets mocked out. So it's kind of a blanket way of just saying anything that you're importing from the layers other than yourself, just ignore it and mock it. And then I've also mocked out. Sorry,
yeah, so this was something really interesting that I hadn't actually thought of. So I've been tackling unit tests for MongoDB for a while, but the thing is, I think this might, just for clarification for people watching, so because of the way charm layers are composed, you can build and include multiple layers down. So if your charm depends on a layer that isn't actually existing in the charm, it'll fail when you try to run unit tests because it'll fail to import. So what you've done is you essentially just said, for this import path, which does not exist at the moment, just straight up mock it out so that your imports will work, and then you can start basically responding to it and asserting that things are being called properly and stuff, which is a problem I hadn't thought of when I started doing unit testing stuff, which I think is a really cool, direction with this testing harness.
Right. Cool. Yeah. So it yeah, and again, it does mock out a lot. But if we decide that that's the right approach, yeah, this is kind of blanket. And actually, there is one more wrinkle and one more complication to this, because you actually have to mock it out at 2 points. And let me show you the big top test. So I end up mocking it manually at import time, and then in the harness, I mock it so when you actually go to use things in the layer, they get mocked out. And the reason for that, so let me just show you the kind of the real thing. This layer that we're testing is this Apache Big Top base. Let's see, it does from charms import layer, and then later on in the code base it uses layer options. So the first mock takes care of this statement. It allows you to import and everything works. And that's in test big top. That's this with mock patch, charms layer, Apache big top base layer, do your import. And then if you didn't do the second mock in the harness, when you actually went to, let's see, use layer options, wherever it is. Yeah, here it is. When you went to use layer options, you'd, because of the way that Python looks up its modules, because you've imported layer.layer Apache Big Top base, you have charms.layer in your modules, but you've mocked out the import for the other stuff. So when it goes to do this layer options thing, it just fails. So yeah, there are kind of those two sets of mocks. Let's see. Let me get back to my harness here. Harness. And the first thing is the import time, and then this actually makes everything in your test work. So our setup basically just sets up those mocks. I don't know if people are familiar with the mock library, but we actually create patches, start them, and then our teardown, we stop them. And that's a way to use mocks without having to, without using the decorator. Yeah, and then the other thing we do is we mock out hookm status, so we can set and retrieve statuses without dropping down to the Juju command line tools, which don't exist while we're doing our unit tests. And I've just got some little status mocks there. And I think that might be a useful pattern to export to other places.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I'll pull up a screen share for myself as well in a second. Cool. I'll screen share after I resize my Nano window.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I was tackling a similar problem, but I want to be able to say that I had 100% testing coverage in my charm layer, because layers have been pretty awesome. They've been pretty fluid so far. We're very open to people iterating and pushing the boundaries in different directions, so we could better scope like what it means to be a layer without being too burdensome. So it's been, I don't want to say the Wild West, but it's been quite free-forming. And one thing I've noticed that we've had a real lack of in general because of this kind of accelerated pace, everyone trying them out and pushing them, is there really was no testing. So I really wanted to be able to say, like I could run nose test and just be like 100% coverage, or whatever the incantation is for, what is it, coverage? I don't even remember that. This is not good. Basically, I want to be able to say, hold on one second, I have a better way to share this. I want to be able to go into my GitHub page and then Travis CI and coverage reporting that I had 100%. So I know I've run this. There we go.
Marco, I think you might need to change the present to everyone from Pete to himself.
Oh, good. No one saw my flailing of trying to get a command line to run. Let me find. Awesome. So this is not a clean branch. I'm working on some more changes, actually. So let me just stash these. I want to be able to run this and have real confidence that I cover every statement, I've done all the proper unit testing stuff, and then when people are contributing and changing, we can actually do per merge request testing for things. I'm more fortunate in my scenario, unlike you guys, where I don't have a layer that's not imported. And what I really tried to focus on was more the reactive side of things, considering that my charm MongoDB layer was really straightforward. It's just a set of classes to manage MongoDB. So I ended up overlapping a little bit with what you did. Let me open up my tests. I didn't do it nearly as nice as you, but I ended up creating this reactive test case, which attempts to patch all the commands that I essentially use inside my reactive hooks, my reactive file. So set state, removing states, setting the status of the workload, and getting config. It's pretty much what this charm uses from charm helpers as well as from the reactive library. And because of the way I do my imports, they're all pretty flat, so I don't have like I do explicit imports of each single thing rather than like just importing all of layer. So it was a little easier for me to mock that out. But what I ended up doing is being able to just assert things like configuration, making sure that states are being set. So the tests are pretty straightforward. I can assert that the right calls are being made. I can mock and patch the other few things per test rather than the global patching of things. And when we started talking with Corey about this yesterday, he brought up a really interesting point, is that while this tests each of the methods individually, so for instance, I have a method in here that handles basically the installation of MongoDB. So whenever the config version is changed, you can change it from an explicit version like 3.2.0, or just say whatever is in the archive or Xenial. So I ended up testing this whole thing, but what I never really tested was, are the methods being called in the states that I anticipate them being in? So something that Corey brought up was really interesting is, I don't really know when configure will be called, or I can't really test to confirm configure will be called in these certain situations. And so what Corey and I started talking about yesterday, and what I kind of had us punt until today, was from a reactive point of view, how can we build a harness that says, given these states are set, these methods should be run? And that way you could have coverage to make sure that what you anticipate is going to work, what you anticipate your code will do given the scenario set. So I think those are the two topics that I'd like to chat about today. One is how do we professionalize the stuff that you guys are doing in the big top layer and the big data ecosystem side, so that it can be reused in layers like mine, where it's not big data specific at all, but I have a very common problem of a global set of patches that I need to apply for all my stuff. And then this more interesting use case from if I'm building a test pattern or a test case for my reactive file, in addition to testing that all of these things happen with the right methods, I also need to be able to say that these criteria, when are set, will execute the methods that I anticipate, which is probably one of the more difficult things of reactive, is making sure that you have the right states that you're responding to, or the right flags you're responding to. And then it's kind of hard to debug when you're running it and suddenly stuff is happening, you're not sure why it's happening over and over again, and it's because you're not responding to a right flag, or you need to set a more granular level of flagging. So I think I'd like to just start with what you guys have done, the big top stuff, since you showed us. Like, I'm curious of discussion, like, how do we take this and make it further from here? How do we push it so that we can, like, what should we do to take the kind of work that you've seeded, which, I don't know, it doesn't seem wrong to me. I know you questioned whether or not it's the right approach, and I think it's a good discussion to have, but granted, if we find the right approach, where should we put this stuff? How should we make this out? How should we maintain it? Where does it get released into? Is this the right pattern at all?
So on one hand, the functionality that you just talked about, verifying, given these states, which handlers would be invoked, is definitely going to require some support from within the reactive library itself, to kind of support that dry run sort of single pass test run type of thing. But does it make sense for the rest of the test harness to live in reactive as well, or should it be its own library? I don't know that it makes too big of a difference, but I guess it's like in a sense the test harness functions for testing that the methods are called in the right under the right conditions, or the handlers are called under the right conditions. Makes sense to be in the reactive framework itself, but the helpers that Pete was working on for handling mocking amongst layers maybe isn't strictly related to reactive. It's more actually tied into just the fact that you're using layers, which we tend to use them almost interchangeably, because they're definitely designed to work together, and you can't, well, I mean, you can use them independently. I know some of the OpenStack charms are actually writing layer charms that are not reactive, but I feel like the synergy there is very powerful. So we tend to talk about them, as a group, but maybe they don't belong in the same place.
Well, I remember you suggested, and I was initially against it, but then I remembered the OpenStack case where they're using layers and having something like this where you can mock out imports that will be coming from layers separate from the reactive framework would be good. I know you mentioned having like a charm.layer.unit test library that could be installed, which had something like the handlers that Pete started working on, and then um, I was going to say that the reactive specific stuff, for instance, asserting when states are set, doing dry runs of execution of code, would live with reactive, but I'm not sure what a best practice is for Python. Do people normally have their testing harnesses for their frameworks live within the same code, or is it something like, can we do charms.reactive.testing as a separate module that the author could opt to install during the test run, but not have it go out through production every single time in order to be able to iterate on both independently but keep the namespace?
Yeah, well, I think on other projects I've worked on, the harnesses have generally lived within the testing infrastructure in the project. But I think if you have a harness that you want to share, it makes sense to put in a library. We have, so I guess I can just share really quickly. One thing that we're doing is we've been using Tox to run our tests, which I think is standard practice. So Tox can actually install dependencies, and we've got these unit test requirements file, which it installs nose and mock, and we could just add something like charms, test helpers, or whatever we call the library, and then the install doesn't pollute your built charm, but when you want to run unit tests, it gets automatically installed. So yeah, I think the best practice would be, if it's shared, it should live in a library that can be pip installed, so you can use tools like Tox to fetch it.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, I think. What would it take to kind of how do you start generalizing the stuff that you have for your big top test cases? Like what would be the next steps for that?
Right. So I think that the basic thing that there's something called Juju harness or whatever, that's a class that you can inherit from, makes sense. And I just need to take all the big top specific stuff out of that harness and make a generic harness, which it's pretty close to that right now. I guess we need to decide whether just mocking out all layer imports in a blanket way makes sense. And then I guess we need to decide whether requiring people to do the mocking twice with the with blah import and then inherit from the harness makes sense. I initially had a mock that actually patched import, and Corey wasn't super happy with that, and I actually wasn't happy with the way it got torn down. It was hard to tear it down after each test, and I think it makes more sense to do the two-patch solution. But yeah, it just needs to be made generic, and I guess if we're making a new library, we could just make the new library and put it up for review and get comments on it.
I'm curious because I've never had a two-patch something like that before. I understand why, but other than crazy import patching, is there any other way around something like that?
Well, okay, so you need to do two things. You need to be able to import the library that you're testing. So you definitely need to patch there. And then you need to be able to run it. And one thing we could say is, well, we don't really need a harness for the second thing. Just in all of your test methods, run this patch. Or maybe write a harness that says, hey, you know what, on class init, pass in these patches I want to make. The reason why I put it in the harness is it's a little bit counterintuitive what you're doing, because you want to be able to, you want charms.layer in your modules, so you can actually use the thing that you're testing like a normal library. So it kind of if you don't understand how mock works, that invocation mock patch charms.layer.mylibrary.layer is weird.
Yeah.
But it is really what you want to do. So kind of putting that magically away in the harness, so that people who want to understand it can understand it, and people who just want their stuff to work, it just works. That was the reasoning behind it. But it might not be the right approach. It might be more proper to say, hey, just manually, you want to use layer.options at mockpatch Apache-based layer.options when you run your test, and you can do it that way too.
Interesting. Cool. Sounds good. I guess we should just do it.
Cool.
I know that one thing that we've been looking to wrap up in our docs that we haven't quite gotten around to yet is a real good section in our developer docs around testing. So having something like this that we could kind of get cleaned up before our 2.0 launch would be, I think, super helpful for people that are just now starting to come around and start writing charms and poking at things. Testing tends to always be like an afterthought, and I like to see if we can't kind of instill it by updating our charm crate templates to, I don't know, potentially stub out what unit testing would look like, the right imports, putting the test requires in and stuff like that, so that just like how we've done with charm functional testing, unit testing is just kind of there, it's in your face, it's really no excuse for you to go and start using it. I think that'll help really start producing some good quality layers. Not that we don't already have them today, but quantifiably quality layers. Quantifiable quality layers. Ugh. Cool. I want to spend a little bit of time chatting about what a reactive dry run would kind of look like as well, which was the second half of this that caught my interest when I was thinking about testing, because it's really not something I'd considered, but it is super important to make sure things are reacting and responding the way you want, especially when you expect your layer to be dependent upon things above you, making sure that state assertions are in the right place and stuff. Corey, I'm not sure if you've had any more thought about it.
I haven't had much time to give it too much more thought. On the one hand, we definitely want to be able to make assertions about the kind of the progress and the evolution of the handlers that get called as the states kind of evolve, and make sure that our assumptions about which handlers will get called under which states are correct. But on the other hand, we also don't want to go too far in that direction where our tests are just basically asserting that our assumptions are our assumptions, if that makes sense. So like we don't want to say like, okay, I assume that this set of states is what I need, and so my test says, okay, make sure that it triggers under these states. But if those aren't the right states that you want, then your test is not gonna discover that for you. So I'm not sure how to find that balance point. But I think that even just having the basic, like we were talking about, of given these states, assert that this set of handlers would run and no others. And I think that'll be a valuable first step, and we can maybe iterate from there. Yeah, as far as implementation goes, I think it would just be a matter of adding something to the reactive, to a flag to pass in, or something that says, don't actually call the handlers, just log what they are, or maybe even just add some logging functionality, and then patch out the actual dispatch of the handlers from the test library. That might be a cleaner separation instead of adding a bunch of code into the reactive library, but I think that will still need some refactors on the in the reactive library. So yeah, other than that, I haven't really been able to look at it in more depth. How do you guys feel about having the support be kind of baked into reactive versus using patching from the test library to kind of enforce the dry run functionality without modifying reactive as much, or without supporting that in reactive?
Well, do we have a use case? I mean, is there a use case for us having kind of a dry run feature inside of the reactive framework? Because if there isn't really, then I don't see. I think I'd not considered it just patching from the outside like we're already essentially doing for everything else. That seems like a pretty straightforward and clean solution.
So if you are debugging a charm and you've got it deployed, and you go into a debug hook session, would it be helpful to say, okay, run reactive as a dry run, and tell me what handlers you would run given the current state? I'm not sure if that's useful when you could always just add a breakpoint, or just watch the log and see what handlers it actually does run. Because in that case, it's what's the point in detecting what handlers would run without actually running them?
Well, I could potentially see that being helpful. Where right now when I'm debugging stuff, I'll run in and I'll just run hook/install, and I'll just trying to piecing through. These are the states that are running now, run, and based on the output, I'll just kind of figure what's going on. But it would be nice to say, I could see it being helpful, being something like charms.reactive -- dry run or something, where it's like these methods from these files would have been invoked if this was run. I could potentially see that being pretty powerful for without having to go through the entire install cycle, seeing, oh, that's not right, this should be run right now. And then have it printing, here are the current flags or states that are set, and then here are the methods that I would run because of that. Now, I guess it doesn't capture everything, because every cycle through the event loop could potentially modify the flags and states, which would then mean that you now have a new event chain that happens. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem. Is without running the handlers, you don't evolve. You potentially don't evolve the state, so you won't see the kind of the consequences of the handlers that did run. So, for instance, for the most basic example, the first pass through the reactive dispatch loop, it runs all hook handlers, and those are primarily for the relation interface layers to set up their states. And if those don't run, then your charm layers, when decorators, won't do the right thing because they won't have the relation states in place.
Right. So I guess I guess with that argument, I can't see a dry run being super useful other than it being kind of a half implementation of what the state is today, unless it could be combined with like a step through or something where you could say run it now but exit at the end of the event loop and you can reevaluate again over and over and over again. But at that point, I'm really just developing a feature now for the sake of for the sake of adding code rather than really having a reason for it.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I could see it potentially being useful in some cases, but in general, it seems like it would be. I'm not sure how useful it would be because you would miss some things. But in the case of if you're not talking about a relation hook, debugging a relation hook, maybe the hook decorators don't matter, and you do want to see which ones are going to be triggered. But I don't know. I'm torn.
Well, I guess I guess to make it easier, I just wait for someone else to say, "Hey, this is my use case for this." I think right now we're just kind of putting a bunch of straw men up to see if this is something worth doing. And it sounds like we should just patch Reactive from the outside as it is today until a more clear use case comes up for having the ability to separate the event execution from the actual processing of what events would be occurred or what methods would be run.
Yeah, and I think that even to support the patching cleanly is going to require some refactors to Reactive because I don't think it's currently set up. It's not currently factored to cleanly be able to do that. So I am creating an issue right now. Refactor dispatch loop choose patching for tests. So I'm creating an issue right now on Charms Reactive and to track this. And then near future.
Yeah, just looking through the tests that I've written, I find what I often do is I want to assert that at the end of a method, some states are set. Because what's actually going to happen is like something can set a state fairly deep down in some other layer, right? So what I'd mainly be concerned about is, given everything else is working as expected, does this routine that I'm writing set the states that I expect? Well, like given that it has the states that I expect to start with, at the end is are the states that I expect to see set, and then it kind of the test I don't know, formally checks up on your event, but there are going to be I think there are always going to be states where a dry run isn't necessarily going to be able to automatically patch things to a state where you're going to get all the states that you want.
Yes, just as a point, I know you have this in your code as well, but just to demonstrate what you're saying is, I was also very keen to make sure that at the end of my configuration of MongoDB and the restarting of MongoDB, the state MongoDB ready was set so that other things could appropriately react to it when needed. So using the mocks, which is a very similar case to yours where the test case has its own state mock, essentially, just making sure that it was called with MongoDB ready, or called once at least MongoDB ready, so that I knew that nothing was getting, well, this is a very simple one, but ones that have more conditionals and stuff like the install path, making sure that, if it is doing a reinstall, it removes the states appropriately so it gets reconfigured, and then other things get set when appropriate, was what I really was striving for with the reactive testing stuff, which I think is pretty important in general from a coding perspective. It may be slightly more important than the actual testing of, given these states, this method runs. But maybe only slightly more important.
Hey guys, I've actually had a family emergency come up, and I'm going to have to drop off a little bit early here. I apologize, but you guys continue on talking, and I'll watch the rest of the video in a bit.
Cool. Thanks for joining, Corey. Hope everything's well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I was actually going to spend the rest of this time just sitting here writing unit tests for a layer. I think this is good. I'm quite excited about the prospect of having a proper testing harness for layers from both a layer import and also to the ability just to mock out kind of globally things that get brought in from the reactive and hookenv stuff. I think that'll be crucial to making it really easy to write unit tests. Well, easier, I suppose. I don't think anyone's really said, yeah, unit tests are easy. Do you have anything else, Pete, that you wanted to add or chat about before I just sit here and mindlessly write code for the next 30 minutes and then get back to work?
No, I think that's it from my end. Yeah, I'm curious to see you write the code because I want to get other perspectives on charms are difficult to write unit tests for because oftentimes the method is just a bunch of calls to the system, right? So I have my own opinions on where to mock and what to mock, and I always like to see what other people do.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do this one. I was super pumped. A couple of the guys in the ecosystem team are working on this layered Docker. It's actually been out for a while, and it is super sweet as far as making it trivial just to start deploying Dockerized workloads, either among other Dockerized workloads or non-Dockerized workloads, that kind of a heterogeneous deployment. So I just wanted to write some tests for it to help contribute. I don't use Docker that much. I'm not much of a Docker guy, unfortunately, but I do know Python. I do know a little bit of Python. Okay, cool. Should go ahead and start a new branch and then just kind of hack on some tests. I'm going to use a lot of the MongoDB tests as a starting point because I'm lazy, for starters. So how did you guys do the test requirement stuff?
So just again, if you run tox, if there's a tox.ini, tox will set up I think it uses just the virtual M tool. So tox will set up a virtual environment, install anything that you pass to it in requirements, and run its tests. So here I can like
tox.ini, no tox.ini or anything?
No, just there you go.
Yeah, okay. We just copied this one from the review queue.
Awesome. I believe when you build a charm, it will automatically drop a tox.ini into the built charm. If you already have one in your source, it will use that.
Interesting. This doesn't do any pip installs. Oh, it does here, pip install. So I'm guessing this does, well, this would be from a set.py file, not necessarily from a requirements.file. Let's see if another one in here. Layer basic, let's see what this guy has. Okay, better. Oh, no, what did I do? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, that looks promising. There you go. So we just added another file called unit testing requirements and just added a stanza below that requirements.txt that does the same thing.
Sweet. There's already one in here. The layer doc already has a tox file. It's just running Flake. Okay, cool. So I'll just add in. Okay, I'll come back around to that in a minute.
Cool. I went ahead and posted a line into the chat, which I on the stream can't see, but cool. And I think, let's see. Right, the charms won't pay attention to just a file called requirements.txt. They'll pay attention to wheelhouse.txt. So you should be fine actually calling it requirements.
So I like to put it inside the test directory just to namespace it. I feel like requirements.txt is such a concise name. Let me add this into here. Let's install commands. I'll come back to this one again. I'm still not confident that I can edit that file without screwing up their stuff. So these guys have a couple things. We got a reactive file, then they have just a reactive file. Okay, I thought there was going to be a lib in here as well. So this should be pretty easy to write unit test for. So they do have a library. They have a Charm Docker library, but this is installed externally from the Charm, from the wheelhouse.txt. Yeah. Awesome. So if I just run talks, talks.
Yeah, and you can make talks depend on the wheelhouse text as well, which I believe is what we're currently doing.
Yeah, it seems like what they're doing here. I'm not sure where this special magic key of packages comes from. I don't know. Oh, this is on Gmail with 535. Oh, yeah, I don't know how it gets this as a depth. Where did it figure that out from? Oh, literally this variable right here. Okay.
Yes.
Of course, that would be.
Yeah, and since yeah, and if you add the -r talks integer /test/ but under deps. I don't think you need, because the pym, well, actually it's all talks, right? So yeah, it should be fine to put it under either place. I'm thinking it because we don't want to change anything that it does for actually deploying the charm, but I don't think talks and gets used for anything but testing.
No, it's just texting. Testing. It treats. Oh, yeah. I have to do the right. I have to do the right thing when it comes to. I'm gonna say that since I have Flake8 in this file, I'm just gonna pull these depths out. All right, I really dug myself a hole.
It's okay. I think if you put packages back in, I think pip will take a lot of arguments. So, yeah, pip install, use wheel packages. Cool. Ooh. Yeah, I think the use wheel wants that packages argument. Oh no, it's still there, but maybe.
Let me find a better another toxicity file.
Okay.
The blues. These guys always have good stuff in here. They don't put a space between the. That's how they do it. Okay. Thank you, the Juju GUI team. You guys rock. And get rid of this. Awesome. That looks much better. Cool. So install a bunch of stuff. Now we can progress further. So I guess we'll need to also add nose. This is always going to be hung up. It's like a roadblock. I literally have to finish this before I can write a test. Sweet, no tests ran. All right, I feel infinitely better now. So let's unbox here. Reactive Docker. All right, I'm going to copy these for now with the hope that we have a better library in the near future. Okay. Change the don't have a lib to import from.
The fun thing is that nose will actually add lib to your path. There's an article going around about that causing some confusion in double imports. But that's
So
something
wait,
useful to know about
it will
nose
add
tests.
lib automatically?
Yes, nose tests automatically adds lib to your path.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This is what I thought it couldn't get better. I could actually get rid of this. I'm going to test that quickly. This is one slightly easier thing. Oh yeah, look at that, it worked. Can I also get rid of this then, I wonder? Oops. I was always a little hesitant to put appending paths and everything like crazy.
Yeah, it should. Let's see. There.
Yeah, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's super easy.
Oh yeah. So you do if you want to import something from Reactive, you need to append Reactive to your path, but you can generally avoid the
Well,
other
I just
stuff.
did a Reactive
Oh.
import.
Oh,
As
interesting.
in, this is at top level, and Reactive is a folder within there, even though there's no init file. I guess in Pi 3, was it a Pi 3? You don't need those crazy init files anymore.
Ah, okay, cool. That's amazing. I didn't know that. That makes me very happy.
And module. Oh yeah. So this is the thing. This is the thing that I need your help with. Oh, actually, no. I can get around this pretty easily. Never mind. I don't need your help. Use import charms.docker. So this charms.docker isn't in a lower layer. It's just an external module. I don't have quite the same problem you do.
Right.
Oh. Oh, that worked. Talk should have read. It's like a tox rebuild command. I don't really use tox that much. Way less than I should.
Yeah, I think it should do it automatically. If it doesn't, you can just it just creates a directory called .tox, and you can blow that up, and it'll recreate it.
So this is it. This now I'm actually getting bitten by it. Just trying to import charms, the layer from charms like you guys do in big data, which does not exist at all.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. So if you want,
yeah, show me what you got.
Okay. So I can show you that you don't really even need the harness. You just need to know that mock invocation. And let's see. So, oh, that did not work. So let me paste it into the chat so you can see it, and then
Yeah, it'll be up here in a second.
yeah. So it's charms.layer dot the layer that you're testing dot layer, and if you mock patch that wherever you're doing an import, so you with mock patch that thing and do your import, yeah.
Do you assign something with your?
You don't have to. You could if you were going to do something in there, but yeah. And then that will just fix things at import time. So you might run into trouble with your test, but that should take care of it.
Huh? What did you do?
Let's see. So it's in reactive.docker.py. Yeah, reactive.docker.layer. Oh, sorry. It's charms.layer. Sorry, charms. Wait, let's see.
So is your import inside of a lib directories or in the reactive file directly?
Right. Okay. Let's look at that file and see how it imports it. So it's going to say from charms import layer. Yeah. So there you're going to have to say reactive.docker.charms.layer.
Really interesting.
Or possibly just .charms. You might be able to leave the layer out. In fact, I think you should leave the layer out. Yeah. There you go. So it's so with mock. Oh, that's annoying.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's look at that file. Let's look at reactive.docker and see what the import looks like. Yeah.
It's right here, yeah.
Okay, so from charms import layer. So if you patch reactive.docker.charms, that should take care of it.
Well, the layer is really what you need to. The thing you can't import is this one right here, the layer. So, but I wonder if this reactive.docker doesn't actually mean anything. I wonder if I could just say charms.layer. I don't know. I'm gonna get creative for a second. I'm going off script.
Yeah. Yeah. See that. Then you cause the other problem. So now you've now you've patched charms layer. So you've patched your file away from the ability to see it. So you actually have to do it from within, or no, but you are just trying to import from reactive, so that shouldn't happen. Wait, what's the? Okay, layer talks.
Well, I do have charms. So yeah, I do have charms installed.
Right. Oh, okay.
I've installed in my virtual env because I have charms.reactive in there as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. So this is expected. So this is not it. Can you scroll up? Is this message actually happening when you try to do the import, or is it happening later?
This is happening when this is happening when I'm trying to patch it right now.
Right. Okay.
If I go back to the other one, it's happening during the imports. If I do reactive.docker.
Right.
Layer. This is an import time error.
Huh. Okay. Can I import the name layer from? Well, yeah, and that's because we're missing the charms because it's doing from charms import layer.
The charms does exist in the virtual env.
Yeah.
See.
But remember, you're mock patching the path that it's going to use to look up the thing in your Python modules. So that's the. So actually, let me look at my tests for. Oh, right. And my reactive handlers don't actually attempt to do any of those things.
Yeah, so I got it to work. This is weird. So I just created a lib charms layer directory, an empty one.
Oh, because we don't have anything in lib charms layer. That kind of makes sense. Wait.
I don't know if it does, but
yeah, because okay, so oh, fascinating. No, this is good. This is good info. So I did have that those directories already existing.
Right, because you have
in the
stuff
big
inside
top.
your
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have to figure out how to make that work without creating the directory.
That would be interesting.
Cool.
So I'll leave that one up to further investigation.
Yeah, so I think the muck patch is not doing anything right now. I think if you got rid of it, it would still work.
Yes.
Yeah.
This does effectively nothing right now. Just importing an empty directory. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Huh.
So I'll look into that mock statement. I'm not sure why it works for you and not for me.
Yeah, well, we have the charms.layer to import from it, and we're just missing a piece of it.
Right,
so
you're missing the options or whatever module.
Right. So the solution might actually be to do a double set of imports where you mock out charms and then mock out charms.layer. Let's see. So this is Reactive Docker.
Yep.
Yeah, I will check it out.
And I will say this is generally speaking a pretty special use case because the guys working on this layer decided to split their library out from their layer. So they have it as a separate Python project, charms.docker, where they do a lot of stuff so that other projects can get the Docker library without having to have a Docker layer in place. So I don't imagine this will be a common problem for those of you writing unit tests. But another mystery solved. Well, no, another mystery shelved. Let me go back to trying to write a quick unit test before. Oh, it's top of the hour. We're done. That's it. We wrote unit tests. Look at that. I think I'll probably do a follow-up hack session like next week where I just kind of spent 30 minutes pounding out the rest of this Docker unit testing stuff. But I am super glad that we had a awesome conversation. I was expecting you or Corey to drop by, so I'm happy you guys did. I think we have some pretty good, interesting things we can work on the next couple of weeks to make unit testing easier for people. Layers. So thanks for joining me, Pete. And then anyone else following along, if you're looking to write unit tests and stuff, email the Juju mailing lists.ubuntu.com or juju@list.ubuntu.com. Find us in IRC on #Juju in Freenode. Reach out to us on any of the GitHub repos around charms.reactive. We'll be opening issues up and starting pull requests and working on code. So if you want to help out, let us know. If you want to test some stuff we're working on, let us know. If you're just interested in writing unit tests at all for layers, let us know. We'll find you a bunch of layers you can help us work on. Thanks.